What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we'll be going over a setup for the Nations Cup race at Deep Forest Raceway. The GTR NISMO is the car to beat this time, so I'm going to show you how to set it up to be as competitive as possible. Before we get started, if you find setup videos like these helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. With that out of the way, let's get started. First up are the upgrades. This build is pretty expensive, especially if you don't have the car already, so make sure you have around 200,000 credits or so available to spend on this, or around 400,000 if you need the car too. You can also apply this setup to the non-NISMO GTR that's gifted to you in single player, but it is a bit slower on pace, so keep that in mind. In GT Auto, we have the wide body, 20-inch wheels with wide rims and offsets, front splitter B, side skirt B, diffuser A, and a high custom wing. For handling upgrades, we have sport soft tires since they're mandated for the event, fully customized suspension, a torque vectoring center diff, and we have all 4 stages of weight reduction with increased body rigidity. Then we have racing brakes, racing pads, and a brake controller. For the transmission, we have the racing clutch and flywheel, and of course the fully customizable racing transmission. Both of these are usually standard. And 2 other upgrades that are also standard are the power restrictor and the ballast. As for power upgrades, I've tried to optimize this build to have as flat of a power curve as possible. To achieve that, I went with a racing crankshaft, and then a fully customizable computer, an anti-lag just because it's standard on any turbo build, and then I've gone with a sport air filter and a racing muffler. If you want to save some credits, you can try going for something like a low RPM turbo, and then you can move the restrictors around a bit, but the power will be slightly lower below the peak. The difference here is probably negligible, but I didn't want to cut any corners here. For the setup, I prioritized ride height and aero balance. This car seemed very sensitive to those 2 settings, so I got those as solid as possible and made the rest of the settings work around it. Stiff roll bars make their return here, and the front is softer to get some more rotation. And then bump and rebound are fairly soft and stiff respectively, with small tweaks to them for fine tuning. If you're interested in how to make adjustments for different cornering situations with dampers, I've left the link to part 1 of my suspension tuning guide in the description. As for natural frequencies, I would have liked these to be a bit softer, but I started running into issues bottoming out on occasion in the hairpin, so I set these just stiff enough so that my ride height settings worked. And then again, we see fairly low camber here, but not quite 0 this time. These were really just set from trial and error, and these settings offered the amount of rotation I was looking for, given that everything else was set up where I wanted it. I also have 0 toe here, but you can also try a bit of negative toe in the front, or toe out. You can also try that if you need a bit more help turning in. While I normally stay away from toe if possible, this car is a boat, and it's also painfully slow when using a controller in the hairpin versus a wheel, so it needs all the help it can get. As for the differential, this is another car that I found no benefit with an upgraded diff, so I left it stock. But we've gone with a torque vectoring center diff, and we always set this to 50-50 because it gives you really nice traction coming out of corners, and I still have yet to find a reason to change that. And for downforce, since we're on sport softs and the car isn't terribly heavy, you don't really need that much downforce. So I've gone fairly low here on both ends. I've gone about halfway on the front and pretty low on the rear. Just enough to have some stability, and then the front is dialed in so that I have the ability to navigate the higher speed corners. And then the power and weight restrictors are just set so that we meet the restrictions for the event. And then I've put the weight all the way to the back, pretty much all the way to the back. It seems to work well in a lot of cars. It puts us closer to 50-50 weight distribution, and it also gives us a bit more traction on exit. So I think it suits this car really nicely. It can make the car a bit snappier on entry though, so if it's too much for you, you can move the weight up to the front some, or you can raise your brake balance from 2 up to something negative, or 0 might work for you too, but you can also raise that as well. And then finally, we have the gears. There's nothing too special here. I've just geared second and third for optimal corner exits, since those are your main cornering gears. and then the rest of the gears are spaced so that I'm just in the power band on the straights as much as possible. If you want more insight on tuning gears, I've left a link to my guide on gearing in the description as well. But that's going to do it for this time, guys, so let me know your questions in the comments, and let me know your best lap times and race finishes if you decide to use this setup. Again, if you find videos like these helpful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.